Let me share my screen and give the floor to Dr. Amditis.
Indeed, Dimitri, and thank you for the introduction. Very happy to be here with all of you. I think it's quite important that emblematic projects like THETIDA are really be able to exploit and to also share with all of you the main things that are happening and the ideas behind the project. And I think this idea of the webinar it's a very good way to do so. So I'm very happy that I'm here with you. Thank you to all of you for participating. Warm welcome from THETIDA, from the THETIDA project, and from myself and from ICCS, the institute I'm representing. ICCS stands for the Institute of Communication and Computer System. It's a public research organization based in Greece under the auspices of the Ministry of Education, and we are quite happy and proud to coordinate this quite interesting project, which I hope through these webinars you will be able to get in touch with, understand what we are doing, what we are planning, and maybe also help us in our work. So today we are having the first of 8 episodes of this webinar series of THETIDA, organized by the project in exactly to explore the intersections of cultural heritage, climate change challenges, and community resilience. This first webinar will focus mainly on inclusive policies and strategic management for coastal and underwater heritage preservation. Next one, please. So as we know, EU policies are strongly focusing on tapping the potential of cultural heritage through high digitalization and by developing solutions that enable sustainability from one side and resilience from the other side against climate changes, natural hazards, but also environmental pollution. And THETIDA is doing exactly that, is trying to address these challenges with a consortium of 17 partners from 8 different European countries, including Greece, Italy, Cyprus, Netherlands, France, Norway, Portugal, and Switzerland, with 7 pilot sites. And of course, in this consortium, we have all main stakeholders, including 5 SMEs, 8 research organizations and institutes, and 4 NGOs and public organizations. And all these organizations are coming together to work for 3.5 years up to October 2026 with an EU funding of almost 4 million euros in order to do what? To develop, test, and validate an integrated multiple underwater and coastal heritage risk assessment and protection system, which will be coupled with monitoring framework, innovative tools and instruments in order to provide a proactive approach to manage risk at cultural heritage sites. How we're going to do that? By employing participatory processes and co-creation approaches, by linking social innovations with cutting-edge technologies from the ICT and sector, including IoT harmonized tools. It is worth mentioning here, as we start this series of webinars, the EU report published specifically for the stream of cultural heritage that describes all the research activities within the first years of Horizon Europe, worth of almost more than 150 million euros that have been allocated to this thematic area. Next one, please. So today, in this first episode of our webinars, we are going to have the chance to listen to 2 distinguished guests and speakers First of all, Professor Cristina Veiga-Pires from the consortium of THETIDA, and then also Professor Alice Newton, that was kind enough to join us and to help us a little bit also with her insights on the issues that we are dealing here. But before giving the floor to them, I would like to invite my colleague Dimitris to continue with a short presentation of THETIDA, some more details on our project, and then, of course, we'll go directly to our speakers for today. Thank you very much again. Thank you for being with us, and I really hope you're going to enjoy this series of webinars. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amditis. Before proceeding to the short presentation of THETIDA and, of course, our main speakers, I would like to give you a quick note on housekeeping. We encourage you all to actively participating by using the Teams Q&A feature throughout the session, and of course feel free to submit your questions at any time. The questions will be addressed to the speakers by the end of their presentations. Alternatively, you can raise your hand if you want to ask a question directly, and then we will open the floor to discussion. Of course, this will be done also by the end of the presentations, and we will ensure that in any case, no worries about that, the questions are going to be addressed and hopefully answered by our speakers. It is very important for us for you to actively participate, as this is something that will make our webinar more interactive and more participatory. So let me share my screen again. I will not take a lot of your time. As you may all know some things about THETIDA so far. Let me share my screen and the presentation, not this, sorry, and the presentation. So, as you can see on this slide, we have a dual challenge of climate change and protection on cultural heritage. The project aims at safeguarding and protecting Europe's coastal and cultural heritage from the effects of climate change and natural hazards. This includes risk management, protection, and preparedness as complementary strategies to prevent damages to cultural heritage sites. Also, we urge to identify and ward off additional threats and promote policy tools for climate neutrality and economic resilience in coastal areas. As you can see here, we have our pilot sites that are located in different sites of Europe: Norway, the Netherlands, Italy. We have 2 pilot sites in Italy, Portugal, Greece, and Cyprus. These 7 pilot sites cover different aspects in the European continent. 4 are underwater sites: Gallinara, Equa, Cyprus in Italy, B-24 airplane in Algarve, and Nisja Cyprus in Cyprus. And 3 of them are coastal sites. It's like Isle in the Netherlands, Svalbard in Norway, and of course the castle of Mykonos in Greece. Let me say that the main climatic risk and natural hazards threatening the sites are ranging from erosion, heat, drought, earthquake, anthropogenic influence, flooding, soil subsidence, seepage, salinization, soil of coastal sites, to temperature, water pollution, and acidification. And of course, something very important: human-induced activities, human-related activities, cooling, overblooming, earthquake, and so on and so forth. All the technologies that are going to be used, you can find them gathered on this slide. We are going to use remote sensing technologies, ocean forecasting systems, climatological and geohazard maps. We will use surface vessel sensor and smart buoys. And of course, smart tags, our crowdsourcing app that is very interesting. And by using all the things that you can see in the center, so this main THETIDA approach, alongside with living labs and citizens tools, we aim to raise awareness, evaluation, engagement for a resilient and climate neutral cultural heritage. I do not want to take more about your time. You can see here gathered all our objectives. Let me just focus on the first one, that we need to contribute on safeguarding and protecting Europe coastal and underwater cultural heritage from the effects of climate change and natural hazards. This is THETIDA. This is what it aspires to do. And a small refer to our green cluster on cultural heritage. We are very proud that we participate actively on this green cluster climate effect project under the initiative, of course, of the European Commission and our project officer, Dr. Gerakis, alongside with Rescue Me, Triquetra, and Stetsi. THETIDA has the mission to bring together actors from different policy, research, or industry landscape stakeholders. We need to facilitate all the researchers and to share insights and best practices. This is why we coordinated throughout 24 with our project manager Panagiotis Michalitis and all the THETIDA team, various initiatives during EGU, during other occasions. From 2025, this initiative will be, let's say, moderated by our colleagues from Triquetra. But in any case, stay tuned. Many things to come, and many common things, as preserving cultural heritage in Europe. It's not a matter of individual efforts, but it's a matter of team effort. So we will be more than happy to help towards this direction. With no other further ado, I will stop my presentation. I will give the floor to our colleagues. Here is a print screen of the partners of the THETIDA Consortium. And Cristina, we are all ears to hear your very interesting and engaging, I hope, presentation. The floor is yours.
And good morning, good afternoon to all of you. First of all, thank you very much for this introduction and for being here this morning. I don't know why, but my presentation is charging again, so I probably didn't do the right button. I will start just presenting myself in the meantime. Since I'm here today to present for the first time a presentation that brings together both the fact that I'm the director of a science center, Centro Ciência Viva do Algarve, as well as a researcher and professor at the University of Algarve. So I will present a presentation that is about intersectionality and why intersectionality matters. So let's start with the presentation and the plan. I will, of course, do some definitions, speak about coastal zones, the Crossroads and regional case study, and some key takeaways to discuss later on, of course. So if we do speak about intersectionality, well, this term is, in fact, a social concept that has been presented for the first time by Kimberly Crenshaw, a lawyer, an American lawyer, that was supposed to defend 5 Black women that sued the General Motor enterprise due to discrimination. And the American law didn't manage to have this in view, because they had discrimination on sex, sexism, being women. They had discrimination on race or color of skin, being Black, but nowhere the superimposition, the intersection of those 2 characteristics were able to take to be taken into account. So Kimberley did define this intersectionality that show that different aspects of a same person overlap and will create a unique and different experience that will reach either privilege or discrimination. If we go on, sorry, this what's it means that intersectionality is a lens to look at some entity. Here we are looking at people still, but it helps to understand how multiple factors, so either gender, color of skin, age, will shape the item we are looking. So putting some factors together and not looking at them separately. If we apply that to cultural heritage, that's what we are here, then it means that we have to look at cultural heritage as I'm trying to go on with my slides and something is not working well. Sorry about that. I have an animation. Okay. And so when we're looking at cultural heritage, we have to consider it is also an ensemble way of looking at different factors. So there are at least 5 factors or six factors, but we can look at several of them. First of all, the narratives of the cultural and historical history of the cultural heritage. We all know that a Shrek, either a boat or a plane, have a specific history and narrative in each place. They are not all the same, and the way we look at those Shreks or fortress or castles have each a very specific history and information that we cannot compare to the other ones, although they are the same item. We have to look at the social and economic settings, and mostly the social and economic inequalities that are around those cultural heritage. When we look at coastal and underwater heritage, we all know that there is a very big difference between the economics and social relation with people that come from tourism to look at those cultural heritage or local people. So it is another intersection that we have to consider in this cultural heritage. Of course, environmental and climate change impacts will be different according to the place where we are, according to the latitude and the general environment and pollution that we are looking at. And finally, the legal and political frameworks that will be working on the community, the link to the community, the preservation and all the other links and interlinks with the 4 other frameworks. So it means that community must be involved, and it is the identity of the local community that will be linked also to this artifact and cultural heritage. And this history of the community, the link of the community. We have several communities around a specific coastal or underwater heritage. And as for instance, if we look at the involvement of divers or fishermen for underwater heritage, we know that it is not the same. So by adopting an intersectional lens on this cultural heritage, we can develop a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable practice, ensuring that all the voices are valued and that we do have the uniqueness of each of the sites. That's okay for intersectionality, I suppose. Now let's speak a bit about these coastal zones. And Dimitris already said part of what I wanted to say, but it is the base of the project THETIDA that we are looking at. So this is a table. It's a bit small, but you all will understand quite quickly what I want to show here. We are looking at the climate-related hazard indices that can be found, for instance, in Crespi et al. 2020 and in a lot of other IPCC or development. But this one is specific on cultural heritage. And when we look at these hazard categories, we see that we have heat and cold, wet and dry, wind, snow, ice, coastal and oceanic. And most of the time, when we hear speaking about coastal heritage and underwater coastal heritage, the only climate-related hazard indices that have been looked at are those ones, the coastal ones and the oceanic ones. So we are speaking about relative sea level changes, coastal flooding, ocean temperature, and biochemical ocean properties that will be changed. It is true in IPCC, for instance, where you can see here, it is the climate-induced drivers over the different systems of ocean and coastal systems. So on the left side, you have all the systems from warm water coral reefs to rocky. So this is very environmental, but I will do always this symmetry between environment and culture, because we do need to reach both of them. So we have here estuaries, mangroves, salt marsh, seagrasses, sandy beaches, shelf seas, and of course the Arctic and Antarctic region. And then we have the climate-induced drivers considered by the IPCC. And as you can see, those are the warming of the water, the marine heat waves, ocean acidification, sea level, storms, oxygen. So everything that we saw in the previous table about oceanic and coastal. If we do apply that for threats and impacts, so it means that this is a work that has been done specifically on the marine environment with the physical and chemical changes due to climate change that have been presented previously. So temperature, salinity, the changes in temperature, salinity, the sea level, the storms and cyclones, and of course the chemical part of the changes in the ocean that will have an impact on the biodiversity. And I have here biodiversity because it will also be an important factor for cultural heritage. And of course, the impacts, both economic and social impacts, that will have an important factor, that will be an important factor for what we are looking at. And this will support, of course, the development with targeted adaptations for each of those. So we are speaking in general about the causes: sea level, storms, tides, which will have some drivers that will be the sea level, the storm, the current change, the wave change in time, but also the sediment supply, of course, due to the storm effect on the bed sediment, that will have as a coastal hazard coastal inundations and coastal erosion. But let's think again about what are coastal zones. And I just put here an example of an article from Education. And when we speak about coastal processes and beaches, we do not just speak about waves, tide, and wind that are affecting the coast. We also speak about rivers. So it means that coastal and underwater are linked to what is happening on the land. So we cannot just think about, here you have on the left, the part of the oceanic. So we speak about the storm, the waves, and all the processes that come by the sea and the ocean, the sea level rise, etc., when we're looking at climate change. But coastal zones are an interface between land and water. And so we have to look at the general hydrological cycle and all the land effects. Some of these are, for instance, the groundwater. We do not have a lot of publication or works looking at the importance of the groundwater, the humidity of the soils, but also all what I suppose everybody already heard about submarine groundwater discharge that go into the sea that can bring nutrients, metals, pathogens, and pesticides, but also will affect the general water levels on the coast and on the shallow regions. So when we are looking at coastal zones and the indices, those climate-related hazard indices, we cannot just look at those that are linked directly to coastal and oceanic. We have to look at all the others that are also linked to the land. And as Dimitri said, we have to look at extreme precipitation, river flooding, but also aridity, drought, wildfire, and the wind abrasion of coastal effects. Not only the wind on the wave that produce some erosion, but directly also on the artifacts. So it means that here also we are at the intersection of different systems, and we have to have this in mind. So now I will just show you some regional cases in order to also speak a bit more about this idea of the intersection. I will present, of course, what we work here on the Algarve. So this is the Algarve region, which is the southern part of Portugal. And this is the result or part of the result of a municipality plan for climate change adaptation for the region. And this is a specific part for coastal zones because, as you know, the national and European strategy for climate adaptation have several sectors, one of which can be the coastal one. And when we looked at the coastal ones, there is, first of all, these differences in the substrate that we have to look at. So from west to southeast, the Algarve coast will change according to all these different type of lithology and coastal geomorphology, from cliffs to lowlands, and the wind dominance and the wave dominance will also be, of course, a factor. So this is a general environmental characteristic of the region. We cannot forget that this region has behind it a system that is linked to differences in the hydrology. So here we have the pictures of the same place several years apart with the drought occurring in the region. And this is quite important because in the region we have aquifers, and these aquifers are, of course, giving some, are linked directly to the ocean. And we can have here a very good example of what is a very specific submarine groundwater discharge, but in some places it is more diffuse than that. So this is a nice view. But also when we speak about erosion, this erosion that we see here is from karst erosion. So it is an effect of not the sea, not only the sea, but also the water and hydrological cycle. So, and we are on the coast. So these very specific factors that are inland will, of course, influence our coastal region. Well, on this project, there was some simulation of the coastal zone morphological adaptation. And of course, we have to adapt for rocky shore and sandy shore. And we used the predictions of sea level rise and storm impact from IPCC scenario 8.5, RCP 8.4, sorry. And we did have as a result the cliff retreat rate and the shore erosion rate for the rocky part, and the sediment accumulation rate and beach erosion rate for the sandy part. So if we look at the present-day vulnerability to the sea level rise, that is the coastline evolution trend from 2000 to 2011, we can see that there is a quite different coastal trend along the region, going from a very important horizontal migration of the coastline to an accretion of the coastline. Just to point out, I will show you a very specific case study here at this place, where you can see that the horizontal migration is quite important along the year. We also have the present-day vulnerability to storm, saying that the impact of the 50 years return period storm has on the coastline. And of course, this is mostly on the lowland coastline, as you can see here. And once again, we have our case study on this region that is quite impacted. So this region I just show you is what we call the Quartera parish. It is a city that is along the coast and the beach. So this is the west part and the east part of the same parish. So this marina should be here on this side. And on the left, you have the future vulnerability for the maximum coastal inundation according to the RCP 8.4 scenario. And you can see that the maximum coastal inundation is already in the city over the two first rows of houses. On the right side, we have the prediction of the coastline evolution rate, which also show you that in 2100, we have the coastline that is along already over the houses. Why am I speaking about that? Because this is the Quarter parish, and I was showing you the results for this harbor here and the beaches here. And now let me show you this evolution along time. So all this region along the last 9,000 years had a retreat of the coast. So here on the left upper side, you have the reconstruction of the coast at 9,000 years before present, and on the low right-hand side, the almost present. And as you can see, there is the retreat normal due to sea level rise after the deglaciation. But you can see also that the geomorphological environment went from a bay to today's two different small rivers that we can see also on the picture on the left. So an important retreat, and this retreat actually is still very active. So on the right side, we have the actual coast. We have the coastline in black showing the past coastline 9,000 years ago. And this red circle is the place of this fortress. The fortress that was built in the 16th century, and you have here a picture of the same fortress in 1974. And this is the pictures between 1980 and 1986. So the 1980 on the top, you have the same small tree on the top and on the bottom picture. And of course, in 1996, all the fortress disappeared into the sea, mainly due to the structures that were built on the beaches on the west side of the parish city. Today, the erosion continues and the tree is not here. Nevertheless, this site has been somehow captured into this very local exhibition that is called With Feet on the Ground and Hands in the Sea. It is an exhibition space that is almost on the beach that has been co-created with the community and that shows historical artifacts, but has also community testimonies and personal items of the community that were lent to this space. And it presents, of course, an important part with climate threats and impacts and evolution of the coastal line. That brings me to my final part about these challenges that we have for preserving coastal underwater cultural heritage and the key takeaways that we can have. So why do we have intersectionality as an important matter for a coastal and underwater cultural heritage? First of all, because a cultural heritage asset is not just history, but is also culture, environment factors, and social factors. We also have to identify those coastal and underwater cultural heritage as impacted both by continental and marine climate related driver threats. We have to look at an ecosystem service that is very important and that it is not independent of the environment that we are looking at. And of course, this heritage loss is a community loss. So if we look at this graph made by a colleague of the THETIDA project, it is quite complicated, but I would just wanted to show that these are several dimensions. We have the dimension of course, the government, the climate adaptation, and heritage management, and we go from European level or global level to very local. And in this all this system, we have the different intervenants and participants that go from private institutions, public and local people, but also the governance. And all these layers are important in order to link what we are looking at for these inclusive policies that we saw are quite complicated when we're looking at the table like that, but the idea is just to try to go for an integrated management system, and this is the link for my colleague afterwards, Alice. I tried to do it, but I'm not sure. As you probably know, coastal zones have now been working under the concept of the integrated coastal zone management, and it is quite an interesting way of involving the community and capacity building, having a circle of adjustment, short-time adjustment, mid-time and long-term adjustment, and of course the monitoring and data assessment. That is exactly what THETIDA is doing. And so when we look at the integrated management system, which could and should be centered on this cultural heritage, we have just to consider adapting this view with climate change, looking at all the environment, just because atmosphere, we know that if we have an atmospheric environment that is polluted over a cultural heritage, then the interaction with climate change will not be the same with an environment that has a non-polluted atmosphere. The biosphere will be very important because it will have an impact on the degradation and the implementation and accelerated by the climate change. The lithosphere, as I showed you, the importance of the geomorphological and the type of rocks that we have along the shore is important, and underwater, of course, also. The hydrosphere, because all the cycle of the water will influence both by river, underground water, and the humidity of the soils. Well, this is transformed in northern parts or high latitudes to the cryosphere, and of course the community participation that will lead to having this different lens on the cultural heritage. That's all what I wanted to present you, and saying that I will probably have the questions at the end after the presentation of Alice, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Veiga. Thank you, Cristina, for that thoughts-provoking presentation. And sorry for not introducing you properly before. In any case, now we have the honor to have with us Professor Alice Newton from the University of Algarve, Portugal, who will be presenting on the Beyond the Beach. Professor Alice Newton is a tenured professor in the Department of Marine and Environmental Sciences at the Faculty of Sciences and Technology of the University of Algarve. Dr. Alice Newton is a chemical oceanographer with a research focus on eutrophication and lagoons. Part of her CV that is, let me admit, very, very impressive. She's a council member of the Estuarine and Coastal Science Association, the European engagement partner of Future Earth Coast, member of the Ramsar Mediterranean Wetland Scientific and Technical Network Climate Change Specialist Group, member of the Future Earth Ocean Knowledge Action Network Development Team, member of the Integrated Marine Biosphere Research Science Executive Committee, member of the Future Earth Coasts Academy, and many more. I think that Professor Newton will address within her presentation how coastal regions, particularly in Southern Europe, are on the front lines of climate change. With any other further ado, we are very happy and very honored to have Professor Newton, and the stage is yours. If you could unmute your microphone, please.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me and can you see the slides?
We can hear you sounding clear, but we cannot see on full screen your presentation. So Either you have to share only your, you know, the window that is the presentation in. I think this will help.
Okay, I'll just try again.
In any case, just to save some time, do you have any questions for Cristina till Alice Newton logs in again? Let's be agile. Any question, you can send it at the Q&A, you can send it at the chat, or of course you can raise your hand and I will give you the rights to speak and to open your camera. If that is not the case, I have a question for Cristina, and I think we will save some time till Alice comes again. So, Cristina, your presentation highlighted the importance of intersectionality in heritage preservation. Can you share some examples, practical examples of successful intersectional approaches from other regions? Do you have maybe other regions in mind apart from Portugal? Just as an inspiration for addressing these unique challenges in coastal and underwater heritage?
So I have some examples in Italy where you also, oops, sorry about that. You also heard about those shreks and the importance of the participation of drivers and divers, sorry, and community for preserving the shreks, where a very interesting part with the local governance has been developed. So the divers could go, but under very open and respectful way with registration. But I see that Alice Newton is back. Let's try. Alice?
Yes, Alice, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm sorry about that. As I told you, I am at the end of the world, at the tip of Portugal, and I don't have excellent internet. I'm going to try sharing again. Can you see the screen?
Not yet. Now we can see your screen. Again, not in full screen, but let me suggest to proceed as such in order not to lose more time and most important, not to lose you again. So you can start, Alice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar, and it's a very interesting topic. So I've been working for a long time on the coastal zone, and I would like to present some reflections really over what is happening to the coastal zone in climate change and how this is going to affect our heritage and our use of the coast. I like to think of it in a positive light because people are so tired of hearing bad news about climate change, and it is a real challenge to our society. So really we must think positively about how we can approach and how we can manage climate change. And the coastline is definitely the front line of climate change. So in my talk, I'm going to talk about what are the cultural ecosystem services of the coast, both on land and underwater. A little bit about what's the consequence.
Alice,
Yes?
sorry, we do not see changing slides. We are stuck with the first one.
Okay. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, now you change the slide, but I see on your screen a presenting Teams button up right. If you press this button, maybe it will be
Can
in
you
full
see
screen.
the content slide now?
The content slide. We see the content slide. Yeah.
I think there's a delay probably. We'll see. I'll carry on, and then when I change my slide, I will say I've changed slides, and you can tell me if you can see the new slide.
Perfect. I will do so. Yeah.
So what I'm going to be talking about is what are the consequences of climate change on how we use the coast at present and how we can diversify our use of the coast in response to climate change. And towards the end, I will talk a little about the role of science and policy in this process and this adaptive management process that we're going to have to adopt in order to be able to respond to climate change. I've changed slides now. Can you see the new slide?
Not yet. We're still on the content slide.
Still not?
No, unfortunately. I think this 2 hours delay. Now we change. So we have 20 seconds delay. We will know it.
Okay. So this slide is about the cultural ecosystem services of the coast. And there are many, and they're not all listed here. Often natural scientists talk only about the ecosystem services from the point of view of provisional services, of services of the coast that regulate our cycles of water, our cycles of nutrients, our cycles of sediment. But they forget about the cultural ecosystem services, which are so important and so valued by most of our society. And they include things like the leisure area of beach, nature, enjoying nature on the coastline, many, many different types of water sports and sports associated with the beach, the general well-being of people from just enjoying being at the beach, breathing the fresh air, and being in touch with nature. But also there's all the cultural aspects such as coastal settlements, the history, the inspiration for art and archaeology, boats, boating, all different types of boats, and also, of course, for our community, the fantastic opportunities to do research and to conserve, to look at marine parks and aquaria and how they can have a role to informing society about the coastal zone. And finally, of course, seafood. Seafood is a wonderful way of adding protein to your diet, unless you're vegan or vegetarian. And it's a marvelous, marvelous source of a variety and cultural, fantastic cultural variety in seafood. Even with the same type of seafood, people use it in so many different ways. Now I'm going to change my slide and hopefully you'll be able to see it. Can you see my presentation now?
We can see it. Yeah. You can go on.
So the value of the coasts and beaches is very, very linked to these natural and cultural resources. And coastal tourism is a key sector of the blue economy. However, up to now, it mainly consists of beach tourism. And that's based on what we call the 3 S's, sun, sea, and sand. But the economic value of beaches is also reflected in real estate, in sales, in income, in job opportunities, and in local taxes. Now, the Algarve has a huge diversity of beaches. Christina's presentation showed us how the Algarve, the coast of the Algarve changes from west to east. There are about 200 kilometers of coastline with about 100 beaches. And these have a lot of diversity. There are coves, caves, scenic cliffs, and long sandy beaches. And this, for instance, is one of the well-known, I believe the new term is Instagrammable places in the world on the coast.
Alice, sorry to interrupt. I have shared my screen in order to work properly. Can you see the screen I share now, and guide me to change slides? So
okay, thank you very much for solving this problem. Yes, so I was talking about this cave, and you can see the YouTube link. It's considered to be one of the most beautiful caves in the world, coastal caves in the world. And because of this, it's become a magnet for tourism, and it's been one of the case studies of over-tourism. And as you can see at the bottom of my slide, there's now a Benagil Cave Working Group, which involves all the stakeholders in the area to try to see how they can control this problem of over-tourism in this cave, which is actually going to destroy it. Next slide, please. So apart from these beautiful coves and caves, the Algarve is known for some very scenic cliffs. And you see two examples here. This is the one on the top is an example near Lagos. It's the very, very beautiful coastline, karstic coastline. And it has these little pocket beaches, which are absolutely beautiful. And the Algarve has invested a huge amount of money in the accessibility of these beaches. So for instance, here you see a beach which has 200 steps to access it. But you also see these other beaches in the Western Algarve, really very, very abrupt cliffs. And again, a lot of money has been invested in access, mainly road access to these beaches. Next slide, please. And then in the Eastern Algarve, as you get closer to the Spanish coast, you get these very long sandy beaches and with a background of dunes. And they're very good for accessibility, but that is also a danger to these beaches because people build on them, they walk over, they tread on the dunes, and they destroy the whole system and the whole system of sediment supply and the whole system of how these dunes are sustained. And so these beaches are also threatened by the mere accessibility of them. Next slide, please. So the Algarve beaches are famous for their Blue Flag Awards. So they have 86 Blue Flag beaches, which is amazing. And 13 of these are classed as zero pollution beaches. So it's a fantastic area for beach tourism and very clean waters, very nice beaches. Next slide, please. So we've been talking about accessibility, and that's an important issue for young people who have little children and have to carry them down to the beach, but also for elderly or disabled people who have trouble accessing the beach because of the sand. And so the Algarve has invested in creating 47 accessible beaches where people on wheelchairs can go onto the beach and then be helped by the lifesavers to actually go into the water. An enormous amount of investment has gone into this. Next slide, please. And the investment is paying off. So the Algarve has won 10 times Europe's leading beach destination. And in this year, in 2024, it also won the world's leading beach destination. Next slide, please. And Praia da Falésia, one of the beaches in the central Algarve, won also the Best Beach in the World award in 2024. So an enormous investment, but also this is paying back because, of course, these awards attract more tourism. Next slide, please. However, climate change is very likely to affect this. There's a huge investment in beaches and beach tourism for several reasons. First of all, because of skin cancer awareness, but also because of the very, very hot summers that we're experiencing now, where tourists who come from northern climes mainly are not able to withstand the midday temperatures. And so, in fact, they stay in their air-conditioned hotel rooms most of the day and only can go to the beach in the morning or in the late afternoon. So there less and less likelihood that this beach tourism will continue to be such a boom as we have known in the past. And climate change will definitely affect this. So one of the ways that we can do, how can we adapt to this? How can this huge investment and the attractiveness of the beaches be extended to beyond the beach, but also beyond the peak periods when it's very, very hot? Next slide, please. So we know that marine settings and coastal settings are fantastic for well-being, and blue space is being demonstrated to be very, very valuable for human well-being. But this also is likely to be lost because of climate change impacts. Because if it's too hot or too stormy, you won't want to go to the beach. It's too dangerous, you'll get burnt, you'll get sunstroke, or it's just too dangerous because the beach is eroding away and you're also in a danger zone if you're in the wash of a storm surge. Next slide, please. So there's been a lot of investment also in the Algarve at diversifying our experience of the coastal zone. And these are some of the examples of how tourism can be beyond the beach. Coastal tourism can be beyond the beach, both on land, but also underwater. So these are two examples. This is the Fisherman's Trail. It's a long coastal path, one of the longest now in Europe. And we have an enormous number of hikers that really enjoy this particular hike along the coast of the Algarve. And they do this mainly out of the main peak season. Another example is the Atlantic coast route of the Eurovelo 1, and that's a cycling route that starts at Cape St. Vincent, near to where I live, and goes all the way to Nordkapp, which the Norwegian colleagues will recognize is the northernmost cape in continental Europe. So it's a long cycle. Next slide, please. Also, there's a lot more emphasis on enjoying nature without necessarily being on the beach. And these are examples of cetacean watching. This goes on all year round in the Algarve. And more we're seeing whales as well as dolphins. And this is Cape St. Vincent. You can see the lighthouse in the background with one of the whales, just a fantastic setting for whale watching. Also bird watching. You can see here the migration of birds of prey that goes through the area in October. So this really extends the season that tourists can come to the Algarve to enjoy different sorts of activities than just beach and sand. And they can enjoy it out of the peak season. Next slide, please. Of course, we have lots of different types of marine sports or coastal sports. And the ones that are very important for your project are also snorkeling and diving, because you can enjoy the coast underwater as well as just sitting on a beach. Next slide, please. So I'm going to explore some of these aspects, whether they're coastal settlements, history, art, archaeology, also different types of boats, but also science. People are now actually doing things like marine biology holidays because they wanted to be a marine biologist, but they ended up being a banker. So they can now afford to spend 2 weeks as a marine biologist as part of their holiday. Next slide, please. So Cristina showed you some of the forts that have disappeared in the Algarve. And I'd like to point out this one here, the fort in Sagres in the top left-hand corner. This is the third most visited monument in Portugal, and it's a coastal fort. But just a couple of kilometers away, you can see the Fort of Beliche, which is now has forbidden access because it's soon to suffer the same fate as the fort that Cristina showed. It's falling away into the water. The cliff is being eroded. Next slide, please. There are also some important historical wrecks off the coast of the Algarve. For instance, there was the Battle of Lagos in 1759, and during this battle, the French flagship L'Océan was sunk, and its wreck still is one of the best diving spots in the Algarve. Next slide, please. We also have a lot of museums that are linked to the sea and to the way that the sea was used and the sea provided in the past. These are two examples. On the top, you see the Museum of Portimão. This is a town that was famous for its sardine fisheries. Now it's more famous for its tourism. And here you see at the bottom the Real Ferreira Neto, which was a tuna fishing station. It was a whole village that was constructed so that seasonally the tuna fishermen could go and live in this village and go and catch the tuna in these big fixed nets. And this has now been transformed into a hotel, but it does maintain a museum so you can learn about how the tuna fishery, how that particular type of tuna fishery existed. And it existed till 1974. At one point in the Algarve, there were nearly 100 of these tuna traps. Next slide, please. But moving underwater now, we can see that underwater museums can be an inspiration for art. And this is an example. This is the art reef in the Algarve. And as you can see, it was featured in Time magazine as one of the world's greatest places to visit. Next slide, please. There are also underwater reefs that are artificial and specially designed for recreational diving. They also provide an opportunity for marine biodiversity and for all sorts of organisms to live in the protection of the wreck, but also to use the wreck as a substrate. And this is an example of 4 Navy ships that were sunk particularly to do this, to provide a good diving site, but also to provide a refuge and to provide a habitat for marine creatures. Next slide, please. So this is a slide I'm looking forward to discussing with our Greek colleagues. I was not able to find any examples of good submerged settlements in the Algarve. That doesn't mean that we won't have some in the future. However, I did find many examples around Europe and North Africa, including some in Greece. And my question to our Greek colleagues, which they can tell me later on, is, are these two sites different, Agios Petros and Pavlopetri? I was not quite sure whether they were actually two different sites or if they were the same site with different names. Next slide, please. Boats can also bring us an insight onto the culture. These are some slides of the Maritime Museum in Lisbon, but also the boats in the lagoon of Aveiro, which I think are as beautiful as the gondolas of Venice. They really are gorgeous boats, the one on the right. They were initially boats for harvesting seagrasses and seaweed, but of course that activity is now stopped and they're now used more for tourists to visit the lagoon. In the middle, you will see a model of a caravela. This is a scale model of the boats that the Portuguese explorers used to explore the world and find all the different areas and the different routes to the Indies and eventually also to India, eventually also to Brazil. They're tiny little boats, really, when you think of how terrifying it must have been for a crew to go halfway across the world on these wooden boats that were subjected to shipworm and could literally disintegrate below them. Next slide, please. Science and aquaria also can form a very important activity in the coastal zone for visitors and also for us to inform the public about the importance of the sea and of marine creatures. So in 1898, the Portuguese built the Aquário Vasco da Gama, and it's still it's just recently been renovated. And I went to visit it when I was a child, and it was one of the things that made me want to become a marine scientist. And then 100 years later, in 1998, for the Expo of the Sea, a big aquarium, the Oceanarium of Lisbon, was built. And this is also a fabulous place to visit and very, very, very important for both tourism, but also for the education of young children, and really, really well worth a visit if you go to Lisbon. Next slide, please. Recently in the Algarve, we've also produced the first, one of the first protected marine parks in Portugal. It's quite a large one. It's about 156 kilometers squared, and it's a reef in Pedra do Valado in the central Algarve with very high biodiversity. In fact, about nearly 900 species have been identified, of which 700 are invertebrates, over 100 are fish, and also 75 species of algae. So this, again, an area that underwater that can be visited, and that in the future, I think, will be one of the destinations of the Algarve, as opposed to just sitting on the beach. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Hello? Yes, thank you. Yes. Local species are also one of the fundaments of seafood, and seafood is so important in the coastal zone. We have a little village in the Algarve called Santa Luzia, and it's known as the capital of octopus. And as you can see, octopus are an inspiration for art and architecture all over the village, not just for gastronomy. Next slide, please. And seafood is so important in the Algarve that we have several seafood festivals. For instance, in the Western Algarve, near to where I live, we have the Festival of the Perceve, which is the stalk barnacle. The seafood which is highly prized by the Portuguese and also the Spaniards, less eaten in other areas of Europe, but certainly a wonderful type of seafood. We also have in the Eastern Algarve, we have the Festival of Marisco, which that means seafood, but it's really about the clams, the vongole vera clam that grows so well in the Ria Formosa lagoon. And then in the Central Algarve, in Portimão, we have the Sardine Festival. And the sardines, Portimão was a sardine fishing port. And so they still have these wonderful sardine festivals in the summer. Next slide, please. So you're familiar with the paella, which is on the left. This is a Spanish cooking method, but it requires a special sort of burner. Meat on the right, the cataplana, which is the Portuguese, the Algarvian answer to cooking the most wonderful seafood. It's like a double wok, lidded, and it also acts a little bit like a pressure cooker because you bury it into the hot coals, or you put it now on a gas burner and you clamp it down and it heats and steams the seafood very quickly. So next slide, please. So there's the paella on the left. The original paella actually has non-seafood elements such as snails and rabbit, whereas here on the right you can see the cataplana, and I know which one I think is more appetizing. Next slide, please. So I was telling you about Portimão. Portimão is famous for its sardines. Portugal's famous for its sardines, and they really are at their best in the summer when we have the peak of the tourist season. And you can go to these little quayside places where they'll grill the sardines for you. Sardines that have just come out of the water a few hours prior, and they're fantastic. Next slide, please. But not just these modest quayside places where you can enjoy a meal for a few euros. The Algarve is also now becoming a destination for gourmet cuisine, including seafood, and has several Michelin-starred restaurants. You won't be paying just a few euros there. I believe one of those, the tasting menu, is about 400 euros. That's with wine. So now coming to the end of the talk, this is about the role of science policy. So in 2002, we had an ICCS recommendation. And how has science contributed to this? Well, we've developed this EMODNet with the support of the European Union. And this is where all our data that should come from all our research in Europe, all our marine and coastal research, this is a repository, and this is where we can access it. And if you look here at this link of the European Maritime Affairs Atlas, actually I was quite disappointed to see there were only 3 sites for the Algarve. And really, that's a responsibility for the scientific community to really present their results on this observation data network, because we must do our share as well. It's not enough to just have these repositories. The science community must actually contribute more to them. Next slide, please. However, one of the important things to realize about the coastal zone is that it's very difficult for the European Union to have oversight of it. And that's because of all the jurisdictional areas, that's all the municipalities involved, really at a local level, and also all the local activities that are involved. And so often it comes down to the national or the local level in order to be able to really do effective coastal zone management. And that is really important to involve all the stakeholders in these activities. And so this is the example in Portugal of how the policy works. So the coastal zone, which you can see in the map on the left, is divided up into areas. And for each one of these areas, there is a plan. And again, like the EMODnet, this has produced a portal, which you can see here, the address on the map on the right. And then when you click onto the different areas, you can see more information. For instance, you can see here how the water bodies are for the western part of the Rio Formosa. However, this also is still work in progress, and there's still a lot to be done. So the role of science policy, we must really contribute to that, and in order to be able to meet the challenges of climate change and continue utilizing and enjoying our coasts. Next slide, please. I'd like to thank you for inviting me, and I'm sorry about all the technical problems we've had. And I look forward to hearing some of your questions and hope to be able to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you for the presentation. Okay, technical issues may occur in any case. That is why physical conferences, seminars are always better than webinars. But in any case, thanks for sharing these valuable perspectives on the challenges and opportunities facing our coastal regions. And as we come to the end of the presentations, I would like to open the floor to questions. I know that we do not have a lot of time, but in any case, we will accept some questions. So please either use the Q&A as I have told you before, or you can raise your hand now, even better, or write on the chat. So do we have any questions for Cristina? Or yes, let me see. For Alice, yeah, we have just a comment from Catherine Miles with so many nice images from you, Alice. And this is lunchtime in any region, so you made us hungry. This is a true story. Do you have a question? Alice, do you want to add something? I see you have raised your hand.
Yes, I have my question. Are those two sites in Greece different or they're the same?
Yes, they are different. We have from the one side Agios Petros located in Alonissos Island, that is part of Sporades in the central part of Greece. So this is within an island. And Pavlopetri is located in southern Greece in the Peloponnese. Just outside the Neapoli city, near Sparta. So this is two different locations, but extra interesting. I've been personally visited the Pavlopetri. It's a unique location, but I have not visited the Agios Petros, but I think we have a colleague of ours within the call, Pascalina Yatsiatsiou, that she's from CMMI. She's a partner of THETIDA. I don't know, Pascalina, if you want to share some more details about Agios Petros that I know that you know more than me. If you want, or you are eager to to contribute, you can raise your hand and I will give you access.
In
I
any
don't
case,
know
in any
if,
case, Dimitri,
yeah, yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there are two different sides.
There are, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have a question from the audience regarding the presentation of Cristina or Alice? Or everything is clear? I cannot see something. I don't know, Panos, if you want to add something, or maybe I introduce yourself as a project manager of THETIDA.
Hello, everyone. I'm Panos. I'm managing day-to-day activities of THETIDA. Nothing more to add from my side. Thanks very much to both presenters, Cristina and Alice, for sharing their knowledge, with particular focus on Portuguese coastline. Really interesting. So thanks, everyone. That's it from my side. Dimitri, I don't know.
Thank you for your patience with all the technical problems, Dimitri, and thank you for all the support you gave.
No,
There
no
is a-
problem. No problem. We have just a comment and a question on the chat. There is an aspiring UNESCO Geopark Algarvensis. Are you working with them, both of you?
Yes, we are. Actually, our research center is one of the entities that started the project. So we are indeed in this, and the aspiring UNESCO Geopark Algarvensis as a very big underwater part of the territory, which is, of course, a very nice challenge for this type of action and information.
Perfect. So before closing this webinar and thanking all of you, I would like to share the information about our next webinar, at least the information that we have available till now, that episode 2 of the THETIDA Webinar Series will be around the end of February, early March 2025. ICCS will be leading this webinar on exploring innovations in underwater cultural heritage. So with that, I would like to close today's webinar. Thank you all for your participation from all the parts of Europe, from east to west, from north to south. And I would like to wish to all of you happy holiday season. Happy Christmas to all of you that you are celebrating Christmas, and hope to see you soon on our next webinar. Of course, stay tuned, follow THETIDA on the social media, and you can send us everything you need either by sending us a message on social media or finding the contact details on our website. Thank you very much and enjoy the days to come. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Holidays.
Dimitris.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.